Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Film Room Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Baress, along with my co-host, Joby Fawcett. This is Season 2, Episode 31. We're recording Monday evening. It's 6:08 p.m. to be exact. Joby, I know you were just at a tennis match. How we doing?
I was, Joe. Listen, we're getting ourselves into the spring sports season here.
Yep.
And so last week, as you know, I went up to Blue for what was probably one of the best, most intense volleyball matches I've seen in quite some time, with Blue Rays coming out with an exciting 3-2 win over the defending Lackawanna League champion Abington Heights Comets. And today, I decided to check out the Abington Heights boys tennis team in action against rival Scranton Prep. So we'll have a report on that later on this week. We're doing a nice little story here on the success of this Abington Heights tennis program. But yeah, it's sports season, and we have someone who really took the spring sports season by storm last week, Joe.
Yeah, you're not kidding. We are joined by Mid-Valley track and field athlete Olivia Thomas. She is our Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week. Olivia, how we doing?
I'm good.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Just to let everyone know what Olivia did last week. It's quite a bit, so bear with me, everyone. In a win over Elk Lake, she had 4 wins and set 3 school records, winning the 100 hurdles in 14.54 seconds, breaking the mark of 15.25 seconds set last year by her teammate Natalie Toludo. It's also the 3rd fastest time in the event in Lackawanna Track Conference history, behind Cassidy Jenkins of Lakeland, who has ran it in 14.28 seconds in 2015, and Skylar Wilson from Susquehanna, who ran it in 14.52 seconds in 2018. She also won the long jump with a jump of 17 feet 2 inches, surpassing the previous mark of 15 feet 7 inches by Haley Drudarovsky in 2014. And she also won the triple jump with a jump of 36 feet 8 inches, topping Judarovsky's mark of 32 feet 11 and a half inches in 2014. And to boot, Olivia also won the high jump. Olivia, that's a lot. And I barely got through it. I know, like, it must be, I mean, I'm sure you're not totally surprised based on, your athletic career way better than I do, obviously. But what did you think of your debut performance in that meet?
I was really surprised. I kind of just took one event at a time and focused on each event that I was on. And I just did everything to the best ability that I could.
Olivia, so I have a question for you. The 100-meter hurdles. Now, you were in junior high last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that event is held with hurdles that are 3 inches lower than what you face in varsity. So I know you had a great indoor season, so you got an opportunity to get adjusted to the higher hurdles, but how has that transition been for you? Because, you've actually gotten much faster than you were in junior high. So tell me how that's been for you to get on the higher hurdles.
I honestly think it's been easier for me because my legs have always been longer, like ever since I was little. And like on the junior high height, I would always soar over the hurdles. So now, like, ever since I got to varsity, like, I wouldn't say like it's a challenge, but it's definitely like forced me to come down more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And listen, with that stride, so sometimes with the lower hurdles, you kind of crowd the hurdles, right? And so now with these hurdles, do you feel like you have a more natural stride in between the hurdles?
Yeah, it feels a lot more natural, and it just feels like a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. See, that is some track and field insight that I have no idea about, Olivia. So I'm glad that Joey's here to ask some questions. But I'm always curious, what is it difficult to balance all those events for yourself? I mean, triple jump, long jump, hurdles, high jump. What is it like kind of trying to balance all those events in one meet?
I think it can be a challenge sometimes because, like, you really don't get a break at all. Like, I started off at long jump, went right to high jump, then to hurdles, then back to long jump, and then right into triple jumps. Like, I really didn't get a break. But I just try to focus on one event at a time, and that usually helps me. And I just try to stay positive through every event that I can.
Well, clearly you're off to a great start. You're a freshman, but you're a much celebrated freshman. Okay, you had a great junior high career. Your accomplishments at the Phil championship meets are well documented. How did you get involved in track and field and kind of just become really a natural at it? I realize there's a lot of work to it, but these events, you have to have some natural ability that you build upon. So how did you get involved in this?
So I was a gymnast for 10 years of my life. I started when I was 3. I ended that the summer of my 7th grade year. And I always played like softball since I was little. So then I quit gymnastics when I was like 13ish. And then I played softball for the school. And then I ended up like coming to one track meet. And then I ended up liking that better. So then I kind of just like, I quit softball after I came to my first track meet. And then I just like gradually like started enjoying track a lot more, and then I've stuck with it, and I've really been enjoying it the last year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, so you're telling me you started track and field in like 7th grade?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. So, what specifically about like track and field, like, pulled you in about the sport as opposed to, the other sports that you were participating in?
I really just think like the team environment is a lot more positive than it is at other sports, and like the teammates there are a lot more like encouraging to you.
So, Olivia, with your tremendous talent and your abilities, you have, in addition to kind of dedicated yourself to this sport, you've taken on some great challenges by running indoors, running at national meets throughout the summer. Tell me how those experiences have been for you and how they have helped you kind of cope with pressure that you know you're going to face as you move forward with your career, as you continue to break records.
I think it really, really helped me because it gets me used to the pressure. So then, like, when I'm going to, like, these varsity meets and everything and trying to get used to it, like, it's helped me, like, calm down a lot and just, like, focusing on what I need to do. And, like, I don't get as anxious anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of spoke to how positive your teammates are, and I want to know what it's like to have someone. What makes being a part of this team so special, and especially what it's like having someone like a Natalie Toludo on your team who's so supportive of someone like you.
I think it, like, helps, like, a tremendous amount because she's never negative, she's never mean to anyone, and she's just always there bringing you up constantly, and I think that helps so much. And, like, just always to be, like, encouraged all the time no matter what, I think, like, it really helps everybody, and it creates a really positive environment for the team.
So, Olivia, I have the daunting task of asking you this question, which often comes up for track athletes who are successful in different disciplines. Do you have a favorite event of the 4 that you compete in? I know you probably could do some others if you wanted, but you're only allowed to do 4. So, which one is your favorite if you have one?
I honestly think hurdles right now.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool.
Make me happy, Olivia, because I'm a former hurdler.
In case you haven't heard. Yeah, so just curious, what do you like about the hurling events over the others?
I just like it because I think it's so much different than everything else. Like, you don't really find events where you jump over items while you're running that often.
So it's the greatest physical challenge of any track and field athlete, for crying out loud. That's why she likes it. Only the finest athletes who are strong and fast can combine that type of athleticism to complete the event.
Yeah.
Olivia, this is not something that I would ever do. I was a basketball player. I just jumped up and down, not over running, none of that. So, Olivia, you kind of touched on this, but I think obviously, the sport's undoubtedly a team event, but it's also an individual event. And, reading your Athlete of the Week interview answers, it seems like you're really grounded, and that's pretty important. What is it like mentally preparing for a track meet and kind of staying grounded, especially with the success that you've had right off the bat here?
I just always try to stay positive while I'm thinking about it, and I just try to stay calm while it's happening, and I try to visualize my race to see how to make it positive all the time instead of focusing on the bad things and what bad things can happen and everything. And I just always try to stay positive instead of bringing myself down.
Yeah, I think that's a great point there, Joe, because listen, she's had great success, and track and field athletes, you can have bad days.
Right.
There are going to be days when things don't work out so well, whether it be with the weather or, you just stumble coming out of the blocks or you just don't have a good race. Olivia, have you had any of those encounters where you kind of have to really challenge yourself mentally and physically to stay focused in tough situations?
I think outdoor nationals was really a challenge to me.
And what was the biggest thing that you faced at that meet?
That was the first time that I've ever hit a hurdle and had a stumble.
Oh, that is frightening.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be. That's definitely why I certainly would never participate in the sport. But
Olivia, Joe Baress wouldn't even go over the little Nerf hurdles that we have.
No, not a chance. Not a chance. Olivia, I thought another interesting thing that you said in your Athlete of the Week interview, and obviously we've established that you two are way smarter than me when it comes to track and field. But I think what was interesting, you said one of the athletes you admire is Tara Davis Woodall, gold medalist in Olympics and World Championships. And you kind of spoke to how you watch her form and everything. And I'm just curious, when you look to improve on, obviously your distance, your times, what are you looking at to improve? For me, like I said, basketball is just it's muscle memory, it's repeating, it's shooting, it's, obviously certain forms of shooting, you change your form and everything, but most of it is just, continuous grind. And I feel like it's a little different in track and field. When you're trying to improve, how do you look to improve?
When I get my videos from my races, I always look at my races, and sometimes I can even feel things that I do during my races, and I just try to the next practice I focus in on that and just I take it one step at a time instead of crowding myself with all these different corrections and everything, because that kind of overwhelms me.
So Olivia, you are only a freshman and the varsity season has just begun. You couldn't ask for a better start. But there are a lot of meets ahead of you. You have some challenges coming up here in the next couple of weeks. How are you kind of getting yourself in a training regimen to build off of this? You certainly don't want to come down from that type of performance. So I imagine your training has to kind of be targeted toward the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
Just tell me some of the things we're going to be working on in the next couple of weeks.
I am definitely working on my block start. That has always been really slow, and it's kind of always held me back a little bit. I always start slower off than everybody else, in any of my heats ever since junior high. So I'm working towards that, and I'm kind of trying to fix my arms over the hurdles because sometimes they go out a little bit too much, but I'm mostly focusing on my block start because if once I get that down, I could probably shave a couple tenths of a second off.
That's cool. I'm learning a lot about track and field, honestly. Talk a little bit about, we've talked a lot about you individually. What do you think of this team, and what are your expectations for this year team wise?
I think our team is really strong right now, and I think if we keep going on the path that we're on, we could have a really successful season in the long run. And I think that it's just a really positive environment, and everybody's always there and supporting everybody no matter what.
Well, you certainly have an outstanding start to your season, and the team is going to be a real powerful team in the Lackawanna Track Conference this year. Olivia, I don't have anything else for you, but I want to congratulate you. That's a fantastic performance. And again, I have a rooting interest in the hurdles, so I'll be following you very closely in that event.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us, Olivia. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. That was our Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week, Olivia Thomas of Mid-Valley Track and Field. You know, not to insult any of the other athletes who performed last week, but to me, Joby, this one was a no-brainer.
Yeah, Joe, and listen, I know we were kind of kidding a little bit there, but the hurdles is an extremely challenging event in track and field. And, you know, for her to improve as much as she has from last year to this year, even with the hurdles being 3 inches higher, it's a great testament to how hard she's worked in the off season. Now, she had a great indoor season, Joe, where she placed 8th in the hurdles, the 60-meter hurdles at the state meet. And at the state meet in indoors, there are no classifications. It's not 3A and 2A. It's just one race. So she did quite well for herself against really some of the best competition she's going to face all season. Okay.
Right.
And her jumping is going to improve as she gets more mature and gets older and gets more used to the running around from event to an event, as a varsity meet tends to be a bit chaotic. But, you know, she's just a tremendous athlete. And to have that kind of performance in her first varsity meet, it really does say a lot about her work ethic. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. You know, Joby and I when we have track and field athletes on, I like to pick their brains because it sort of fascinates me. Obviously, you know everything that goes into it, but, you know, I'm happy that, you know, Olivia kind of talked about even what seems like the smallest things, getting out of the blocks, you know, positioning of arms, going over the hurdles. It's, obviously, you know, even you look at a Noah Lyles and like his biggest issue is getting to top speed, getting out of those blocks. And he's a gold medalist, you know, Usain Bolt, even he didn't get out of the blocks that fast, but he was just so unbelievable. But, you know, getting back to Olivia, it's kind of fascinating to, you know, you're kind of always studying, always tinkering, and, you know, and it's like, you know, I feel like it could totally become overwhelming, but she seems super grounded, and, you know, that's absolutely how you have to be. And, you know, just balancing all those events too. And having to like train for each one individually. I mean, I know, you know, the 3 of them are all jumps and, you know, one is hurdles, but they're all very different. And, you know, I'm just constantly fascinated at how, you know, track and field athletes are able to kind of balance and do multiple events simultaneously.
Yes. So she's extremely talented. And anytime you're doing the field events, the jumping events, it's, you know, there's so much technique that goes into those events, Joe. And you may or may not know, I used to coach track and field as well. So, you know, I had to do a lot of studying even after my years of running. I wish I had
Sure.
some of the knowledge I had after while I was competing. But, you know, so often, you know, we used to have a colleague of ours too who used to believe this too, that how difficult could track be? You just run as fast as you can. Well, that's really not how it works in track. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of technique involved. There's a lot of strategy involved. There's a lot of training involved. There's, you know, the block starts are extremely challenging. You know, it's something that you really have to learn how to do and master. And clearly, Olivia feels she's still working toward doing that. So that's a great thing for her. That you know, you're constantly working and practicing. And Joe, I can't emphasize this enough. People don't realize how difficult it is to train for track and field, especially an event like the hurdles, where, you know, you can't constantly be working on them because
Right.
it is such a technique event and it's such a timing event. You know, you have to have your steps down. You have to have your lead leg in the right spots, and you have to have that leg land properly, and you have to bring that other leg around and get it out in front of you. And a lot of it is repetition, but you also can't overdo it because then you lose your technique. So there's a fine line you have to work there. And she's clearly off to a good start to her freshman season. So she's done a little bit of the work right now, and the sky's the limit for her, Joe. I really believe that.
Right. Yeah. It should be fun to watch where she's able to go. And yeah, Joby, we're no pun intended. Well, I guess the pun is intended if I already said it. We're off and running here at the
No, we are, Joe.
season.
You did kind of say it was a no-brainer, but we did have some good performances from a lot of people last week.
Yeah, exactly. Just to kind of go through a few here, because I mean, obviously we're early in the spring season. It's not like we have to delve deep into all the sports, but I would like to congratulate Morgan Davis of Abington Heights lacrosse. She, I believe, had 11 goals total last week in 2 games, including the 100th of her career. And let me point out, she's a sophomore, so she's going to score a lot more. She's great. I believe our returning lacrosse player of the year. So congratulations to her. That is a team that returns a lot of great players from a team last year that made the state semifinals. So great team there. And, Morgan Davis scoring more goals, which.
Yeah, Joe, you mentioned this team, Allie Rothenberger's Division I kid from this team as well.
Yep.
And, Morgan Davis, she made a big splash last year as a freshman. She was our player of the year in girls lacrosse. She's an extremely talented lacrosse player. And congratulations, that's a heck of a milestone. And the funniest part about that is I think, her mom's the coach, Becky Davis, and she couldn't have emphasized more to me in our interactions how important the team is, not the 100th goal. So they all have it all in good perspective there at Abington Heights. Good, very, very good team.
Absolutely. And Joby, maybe you can talk about this a little more, but we had some very interesting boys volleyball right off the bat. Just before we get to your match, I believe if I read the email correctly, North Pocono rallied from a 2-set deficit against Pocono Mountain West.
That was on Saturday. Yep.
That was on Saturday. So great win for them. But you were at quite the volleyball match last week, as you mentioned on top of the show, Blue Ridge, Abington Heights. So I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
I do, Joe, but here's the thing. One of the great things about Lackawanna League volleyball right now is it really has been elevated, okay? And this year in particular, I think, I was at the Blue Ridge Abington match, which I thought was going to be one of the marquee head-to-head encounters, and believe me, it lived up to and exceeded my expectations. It was just incredible competition between 2 very talented and well-coached volleyball programs, and I will get into that. But one of the things that I keep hearing around the league this year is keep an eye out on North Pocono and Valley View. These are 2 teams that have made great strides in the off season. They do play a lot of AAU volleyball in the off season with boys and girls volleyball. So Valley View is only a 3rd-year program. So there's a lot of interesting matchups still ahead. And the Blue Ridge Abington Heights one, Abington Heights has won a couple of championships here, and last year was so dominant. And Abington Heights has some quality players back from that team. Dan Beck's an outstanding frontline player at the net. Ryan Horitz, who we are very familiar with from his diving expertise, but he was an all-region player last year as a setter in leading that team to the District 2 championship and a state playoff win. And your friend, Billy Johnson, the fantastic goaltender from the state champion Abington Heights Commons boys soccer team, he is a force this year. Now, he didn't play much last year, but he is a force this year at the net. I think he's got 20-some blocks in 3 matches. He's just terrific defensively, and he's starting to kind of really turn that into some solid offense as well. And then for Blue Ridge, Joe, Lori Zick, she just does it again. I mean, she's doing a great job with this group. Jacob Brown, who's up in the front line, he's only a sophomore, and he had he had 21 kills.
Wow.
In the match against Abington Heights. Now, it went 5 sets, so that's going to inflate your numbers a little bit offensively. But this was an intense match. It was back and forth, once you get into set 5 and it's the race to 15, Joe, you really have to get off to a good start. And Blue Ridge was able to do that. And once you get a little bit of an advantage, it's very difficult to come back because it's such a quick match or set, okay, to get to 15. And Blue Ridge was able to hold on for a 3-2 victory, and Blue Ridge shares first place in the league with Valley View. Now both teams are undefeated. They'll get back into action Tuesday this week. Both teams there, and Abington Heights is not going away. Believe me, this is going to be a difficult grouping. These 5 teams, okay, North Pocono, Blue Ridge, Abington Heights, Valley View, and don't be surprised if somebody else sneaks in there as well from the other teams in this league. There's some good volleyball ahead of us for sure in the league.
Absolutely. And Joby, I shouldn't have gotten off of track and field as quickly as I did on the same night that Olivia Thomas, sets 3 school records. Montrose ended Lakeland's 67 meet winning streak. Lakeland's last loss came to Wallenpaupack in 2012. I was a senior in college. And the last loss to a Class 2A team was in 2008, which I was a senior in high school. So really, obviously it's tough for Lakeland to lose that win streak, but also, they should be proud of how long they made it last.
Yeah, and Joe, listen, credit to Montrose. This is a program that's been building toward this. This is probably one of the deeper Class 2A teams in District 2 this year. Montrose, it got some good sprinters. Sadie Jones, who we are very familiar with her work from basketball. She is a terrific athlete for Montrose in the javelin and the jumps and in the sprints. And they have some solid distance runners as well. They have terrific field event athletes in the throws. Anna Tolotzen, you may remember her from tennis season, Joe. Montrose had a great year in tennis this year. And so they've got real good balance across the board. And that gave Lakeland fits in this dual meet. Lakeland's in a little bit of a rebuild mode, but what I will tell you about Lakeland this year is its individual talent far exceeds where they don't just have the experience in the roster. Okay, so you've got Kaylin Davis, who was last year's Times-Tribune Performer of the Year, and you've got Bria Hill, who was an outstanding mid-distance runner, and they both are coming off a terrific performance in the North Penn Open Invitational on Saturday. Kaylin Davis won the javelin, and Bria Hill set a school record in the 200. So they do have that individual talent. It's just right now their youth is kind of hampering them a little bit. But Joe, what can you say? 67 straight meets is a tremendous number.
Right.
And as you pointed out, which I was happy that you did, it's not necessarily about the number of meets you've won in a row, because 67, while it is a big number, it should be a number that's taken with even more appreciation because there are really only 5 track meets a year.
Right.
So in order to get, they've gone, 12 years without a loss?
Right.
That's not too bad when you consider if Kaylin Davis is a senior and she's 18, let's say she's 17 or 18 years old. Okay, she was in kindergarten.
Right, exactly. Really puts it into perspective.
Yes, so you have to give them credit for that, and I think the same would hold true if and when Abington Heights girls ever lose. They've got 109 straight dual meet victories, so that winning streak goes even farther back than what Lakeland's did. I think it was in 2006.
Right.
So you're talking about 2+ decades, Joe.
Right. That's incredible.
And you only get kids for 4 years.
Right. Right.
So you kind of have to, restack the deck a little bit every year. So,
yep.
Again, shining a little bit of light on the Lakeland situation. There have been years when really that program has been undefeated with 13 or 14 kids on a roster.
Right.
That's pretty impressive as well. So the season's gotten off to a great start, Joe. We had some great dual meets in the crossovers. Now, they don't count toward division championships. they start this week. So I'm expecting big things. I mean, we already have such great, in addition to Olivia Thomas setting school records, a couple of kids from your alma mater, Holy Cross, Xander Schaefer and Brandon Fottle, each set school records. One on the
Phenomenal. Yep.
100 dash, one on the shot put. So we got kids doing it right now, Joe. And it's the first, and it was cold last week.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
So did you check the temperature on Saturday?
Oh my God, it was like 30 degrees.
Unbelievable.
Like it was ridiculous. That's the spring sports season. It's it's tough to navigate, but yeah, you said it right. I mean, we are really off to a fast start here. There have been some excellent games, meets, all that stuff. Interestingly enough, Abington Heights baseball just their first few games of the season, they beat Mid Valley, they've lost to Pittston area, they've lost to Scranton, but just to put those, those are some big time games on the top of the schedule there. Scranton had a 4-run rally in the 6th inning for a 6-4 win over Abington Heights. Abington Heights held off Mid Valley last week and lost to Pittston area, who still has Elijah Barr and I believe Bo Whittick. They're an excellent team as well. So there have been some marquee matchups, leading off the year. I also want to mention Luke Miller of North Pocono Lacrosse. He scored 5 goals, including the game winner in overtime as North Pocono beat Liberty on Saturday 7-6. Also, Cora Castellani, just different sport, same result. It feels like another big game. She goes 3 for 5 with 2 runs and 2 RBIs, including the game-winning base hit in a 12-11 victory over Pittston area. Also, Abby Call picking up where she left off last year, went 4 for 4 with 2 home runs and 5 RBIs for the defending softball champion Valley View Cougars. So yeah, it's we're moving, Joby. We're moving.
Yeah, John, I believe the league season starts this week, right? We're getting into the games that do matter and do count, and hopefully the weather will cooperate. As you said, it's not it's not easy. It's not easy for our spring sports athletes here in Northeast Pennsylvania. You're constantly dealing with the wind and the cold and too often the rain.
Yeah.
And so hopefully they'll be able to kind of stay on schedule.
Right.
Moving forward, it's going to be a challenge, but I'm sure that they'll do the best they can. We have some very good programs and very good teams. We haven't even talked about Nick Bradley pitching yet.
Nope.
His kid is going to Auburn.
Exactly.
And he's a multiple-time player of the year for us, and he's outstanding. You mentioned Valley View and the defending state champions in softball. We were just talking about that in the gym today about, you say you have to replace a good part of the lineup, but hey, this is a program that's used to winning.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, it's, today was a beautiful day. I think it also rained. Yeah. And then it started raining, and then, I was looking at the weather earlier this week, and it looks like some rain coming again. So yeah, it's certainly a challenge, but they'll work their way through it. So we'll get there. We had Scott Walsh out at a baseball game today. He covered the Mid Valley Dunmore game, and I'll just break it. Dunmore won 3-0, depending on when you listen to this, and be sure to check out Scott's game story at the Times-Tribune.com/sports later tonight. So that's another good game there. So, and we had a pretty big schedule today, Joby. lot going on. Obviously, you were at tennis. You got baseball, softball, track and field. We're recording this podcast. There's our native son, Gerry McNamara, had a press conference today. He's Syracuse's head coach, and yeah, there's a lot going on, Joby.
Joe, let me just obviously send out congratulations to Gerry McNamara. You have to remember something, Joe. When my first year covering high school basketball was Gerry McNamara's freshman year. So I can remember, I was a clerk before I was a staff writer, and, he was a sensational junior high player in 7th and 8th grade. And his AAU reputation had all preceded him coming into the varsity. And I can remember everybody saying, well, you got it. That's quite an assignment you're getting for 4 years. and they couldn't have been more right. And the one thing I will tell you about Gerry McNamara is, because I keep getting asked by people at the gym, people even when I'm out, just hanging out with friends, this was a big story for Gerry to go back to Syracuse because he was such a phenomenon. Yes, they won the national championship with Carmelo Anthony, but he was one and done, Carmelo.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And what Gerry created while he was a player at Syracuse was just a manifestation of what he started here in the city of Scranton,
right,
in Pennsylvania. There was a caravan of March buses that would go to watch Gerry play in Syracuse. Joe, you were on several of those journeys. He just had an incredible following. Boy, what if the NIL era had started when he was in high school, and then of course when he was at Syracuse?
Oh my God,
he wouldn't have to worry about coaching anymore.
Seriously.
But it always appeared that Gerry was going to be a coach at some point.
Right.
He just had that about him and his presence. But what I can tell you about Gerry is I didn't have much interaction with him after his high school career because, as you know, it's cyclical for us, right? We have to move on to the next group of guys, and then
right.
You kind of hope you get a chance to chat with a kid like him as he matures and moves on to success in college. And I mean, I did. I still have forged a great relationship with Gerry, but as a high school basketball player, I knew, you always find these very intense competitors. Okay. And I put Gerry in the upper echelon of that group. We're all competitors. If you're playing, it doesn't matter whether you're the sixth man off the bench or you're the guy picking up the water bottles, or we're all competitors. Okay. And Gerry just had that look about him that there was never a challenge that he wouldn't accept. And the devastation of losses just ripped his heart out. And you could see that on his face.
Right.
So, and he was the ultimate winner. We've been fortunate here in Northeast Pennsylvania. We've had a bunch of guys like this, not necessarily that have gone on to great success that Gerry did, but we've had guys who went on and played in the NFL.
Right. Exactly.
And I knew when Gerry took the job at Siena, the goal was to get back to Syracuse and prove he could be a head coach.
Sure.
I think his timeline has gone a little bit faster than people might have anticipated.
Right.
But that performance against Duke in the first round, I think, solidified what Syracuse needed to do. And if you listened at Paul to any of his press conference, he's clearly the guy that Syracuse is going to be happy with.
Right.
He bleeds orange. He's a competitor. He's just so dedicated to his craft. He's been like that since he's 12 years old or 13 years old. And, he inspires other athletes just by his presence and what he was able to achieve when you look back at some of the things that he did as a high school and collegiate athlete. If you're a young recruit, you have to be energized by the energy he has shown toward the sport of basketball. And I think he's going to do great.
Absolutely, Joby. I couldn't have said that better myself. Obviously, even in, he's made such a huge impact, like you said, and it's not just locally. I mean, he had one of the most, his performance in the Big East tournament his senior year is legendary nationally, and he's a national champion, hitting 6 threes, I think in the first half of that game as a freshman. I mean, and you're absolutely right. Like he's the guy. He's going to do great, and absolutely, obviously absolutely thrilled for him as someone who also went to Bishop Hannon. And, so that's just, it's great for him, and it's just great for the area.
Never doubt Gerry McNamara. That's all I'm going to tell anybody.
That's right.
Do so at your own risk.
Not 10 games, Joby. Not 10. I can't say that full quote, but it's one of my favorite press conferences ever of Jim Boeheim.
Well, he had a great relationship with Jim Boeheim.
Yes, he did. Yes.
And I always thought right from the get-go he was going to go to Syracuse. He's probably one of the, if not the most highly recruited athlete out of our area.
Right.
Probably since Muddy Munchak. Okay?
Right.
He may have exceeded that. He just was on everybody's radar back then. You're talking about the Blue Bloods.
Yeah, like Duke. Yeah.
I always believed he was going to Syracuse, and he had a great relationship with Jim Boeheim. And look, he probably still has that T-shirt. He probably put it up on his wall. It's the overrated T-shirt with the question mark. Again, when that whole ordeal happened with him before the Big East tournament, I said, boy, if there was ever an athlete locally who epitomized "don't poke the bear,"
right,
it would be Gerry McNamara.
Yeah, no, without a doubt.
And he just, I think he's going to do great things, and it'd be great to revitalize Syracuse basketball here, because I think here even locally, Gerry had such an impact on the fans here that they kind of fell in love with Syracuse basketball as well. Not just Gerry, but
right,
making that trip and going up to the Carrier Dome, and there's always other activities involved in those types of journeys, and full day events that you put together, tailgating and whatnot. So I think we're going to see that again with Gerry being the coach.
I would say so, Joby. I would say so. So
get your merch, Joe.
Yeah. Get your merch.
Isn't that what the kids say now?
Sure. Whatever you say. I know how you are in touch with the times,
Yeah, I'm far I'm far out of touch with that.
So all right.
Should we talk about Duke? Yes.
Joey, I'm surprised that you hadn't brought it up yet.
Do you think I'm like the lead? Like, what was the movie where where a guy played the dentist and Marathon Man? Did you?
God.
I don't want to torture you, Joe.
I appreciate that, Joby. I appreciate it.
That's a lousy execution at the end of the game.
Joby, I would just like to say that isn't it getting boring for people to hate Duke at this point? Come on, they always lose in like horribly heartbreaking fashion.
Joe, this isn't going to work. You better stop while you're ahead.
Listen. Have there ever been worse back-to-back tournament losses than blowing a 15-point lead against Houston and then just absolutely blowing this lead against UConn? I mean, this is pretty bad.
Joe, these are both very bad losses.
Yeah.
Okay, but these are still kids. Don't forget that. Okay.
Well, no, I agree. I agree with that.
You have to remember, I grew up in the Christian Laettner era of Duke, and that was nauseating. And you could never get past it. I can never. I'm a North Carolina fan.
That was 35 years ago.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It really is. For me, I am extremely loyal to my teams that I support. Okay, we all know the Los Angeles / St. Louis Rams, the organization. I'm a huge fan, like sick fan of that team and that franchise. And we have the teams that we dislike quite a bit as fans.
Right.
Many of the fans, however, are hardcore haters of Seattle and San Francisco. Okay, but I'm old school. I go all the way back to when the Dallas Cowboys and the Minnesota Vikings just absolutely dominated the Rams. So those are the two NFL teams that I, along with the New England Patriots, who stole 2 Super Bowls from us. But yeah, so Duke's never going to shake that moniker, Joe, no matter how many heartbreaking losses you get. In fact, I think we revel in it.
Well, that's fine. Keep reveling. Listen, that was a tough one to swallow, but it was, you could see it coming from a mile away. And
I couldn't, Joe. They were up 19.
Oh my God, come on. The way that game was going,
I don't know, Joe. You really have to play really poor basketball for a stretch of time to lose a 19-point lead in the second half.
Listen,
You played the sport, Joe.
Absolutely. How many things? Well, as a fan, you just kind of expect the worst. But
it's funny, Joe, because listen, I am listening to Duke fans wallowing in this collapse, but you forget that Siena lost a 14-point lead in the second half to Duke.
That's correct.
St. John's lost a 12-point lead in the second half to Duke. Right? So when it happens, turnaround's fair play, Joe.
Oh, well, no, absolutely, Joby. But, it's at what, I've had this problem, and I love him, and I think he's smart as hell, and I think I loved him as a player. I think you got to take a look at Shire. I'm sorry. Well, you can't lose these games. You can't lose these games like this.
This one is a heartbreaker, clearly, but he's always rubbed me the wrong way, especially with his post-game antics with the North Carolina game this year. It's never, he got hit with a water, really.
The thing is too here now.
He lost a 17-point lead in that game in the second half.
Yeah, I was watching, but so when you're going into that game, and all I'm thinking is when you're going in against St. John's, it's just Pitino's the better coach. You're going in against UConn. Dan Hurley's the better coach. I don't know. I just think I don't know. I don't want to go in with the inferior coach. I just think he's inferior to these guys, and he's doing fine in the recruiting. The talent he's bringing in is insane, but he cannot. These games, it's brutal, and you really do have to look at the coach. I'm sorry.
Well, that's why you're a fan, Joe.
Because like you said, the kid, they're kids. I feel terrible for Caden Boozer. He had a hell of a tournament, and he's going to have to look at that highlight for the rest of his life of him trying to throw the ball down court. It's brutal. And like you said, 5 things have to go right on that last play for UConn to win. They have to somehow get a steal. They got to get a shot off. And he's got to make a 45-footer from from the logo. And that happened. And it sucks. And
you know what they say, Joe? They call it March Madness for a reason.
For a reason. I just, people are going to hate to hear me say this, but, I'd like it to swing back Duke's way at some point.
You're a Duke fan.
These are heartbreakers, Joby. They're really bad. But anyway. And also, could Dan Hurley, just stop with some of the things that he does?
Well, he can't. He can't stop himself. No. That's his personality.
I guess we're allowed, and, good on the ref for not doing anything about it and deciding a game like that. But I guess we could just get in the ref's face and bump foreheads with them now.
I think everybody has to take a step back and just understand the context of what happened there. I think it was it wasn't even that he was confronting the referee. Joe, the Duke, if you want to hear something that's pure comedy, and I realize your first reaction has to be, how can we possibly win with 0.3 seconds left?
Yeah, we can't.
Or how did we blow this?
Yeah.
And and everybody is extremely fast to say, hey, somebody came off the technical. Get us a technical. Nobody wants the technical in that spot, Joe.
Well, to be clear, I said good on the ref for
yes. No, you did.
Right.
You did.
I want to be clear. Yeah.
But if you want to hear pure comedy, you have to hear the Duke radio broadcast.
Oh,
right outside. It is 6 minutes of absolute just comedy. It's so funny, especially if you're rooting against Duke. Now you're rooting for Duke, so you're going to probably not find it as entertaining as I did.
Right.
But again, you're in that situation. You want desperately for any which way for that not to be the way you go out.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Listen, it's been an exciting tournament. It's not been great basketball, but I think Michigan's terrific. I think
they're a great team.
I think that Michigan-Arizona game is the national championship game, but
absolutely it is. You're right.
Shame on the Final Four. They don't know how to seed it properly.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that, either of those teams can't come out and win the national championship, but Michigan and Arizona are the two best teams. I don't think there's any debating that.
Well, you have to remember, Joe, they set this up where Duke was the number one seed overall, right?
Right.
So Duke would have been the one, and I guess the team coming out of the West region, right?
Yep.
Would have been considered the 4.
Right.
And then Arizona would have been considered the 2, and Michigan would have been considered the 3, or vice versa.
Right.
So that's how you get this pairing. You had an upset in the. Remember, Florida got beat.
Yep. Exactly. So.
But yeah, I think that is a great matchup for the semifinals, and it's been it's been at least at the very least entertaining at times. It's not been great basketball, I don't think, but I don't think anybody would argue some of these finishes have been great.
Very entertaining, without a doubt. Obviously my bracket has now fallen apart, but good. Very, very entertaining. Very, very good games. Living up to the madness for sure.
I have a guaranteed person in the final.
Okay.
I have Arizona playing Michigan in my one semifinal, and I unfortunately had St. John's playing Florida in the other side. So that's where I stand now. I have Michigan winning the whole thing, so we'll see how it plays.
Excellent. I wanted to, and you could talk about it if you want to, Joby, but you had the all-region swimming released. It published in our paper on, I don't know if it was last week, Friday or Saturday. I forget what day it was. But yeah, your all-region team came out, and my all-region girls wrestling team will be published in tomorrow's paper. Depending on when you listen to this, I guess I'd be breaking news, but the wrestler of the year for the girls was Abington Heights' Hayden Manning. Absolutely deserves it. She's 34-3, and not that I want to bring up, anyone's losses, but the losses kind of prove just how great a season she had. She lost to 2 state champions this year, and they're also 2 of the best wrestlers in the nation, and someone who finished 4th in the state, and those are her only losses. And she state silver medalist, state bronze, regional bronze medalist, and district champion. So great season for her. Also, Lackawanna Trail Sydney Schaefer, Delaware Valley's Kate Pryor and Kira Snyder, Honesdale's Sage Olver and Madison Miller, Wallenpaux's Rosa San Clemente, and Western Wayne's Mia Gifford and Addison Wargo are also on the team. I kind of enjoyed making this team because it's a cool, again, we've discussed it, but it's kind of a cool passing of the torch moment. Some of our greatest area wrestlers in this PIAA era, this very young PIAA era, Sage Olver from Honesdale and Kate Pryor from Delaware Valley, our first 2 wrestlers of the year for the girls, will be graduating. And we have some great freshmen, and 2 of them are Hayden Manning and Sydney Schaefer. So cool passing of the torch moment. Really enjoyed making that team.
Yeah, Joe, you put a lot of work into that. I know we have some other all-region teams that have to
Yes.
be unveiled as we move forward here at the tail end of our winter sports wrap up. Joe, the swimming, every year I think it's going to be a pretty cut and dry process. And yet I find myself every year, being in a tug of war with my emotions as to how I'm going to properly honor these
Yeah.
fantastic athletes and their great performances throughout this year. And, Rebecca Oakes she was the female swimmer of the year last year. She was again this year. She had a terrific junior season, and I just felt that her overall performance from start to finish in leading Scranton Prep to an undefeated regular season and a District 2 team championship and her 2 gold medals at the Les Richards and 2 gold medals at the District 2 championships were enough to crown her with that award again. And then the boys was extremely difficult. Joe, you know how I was really agonizing over this.
Yeah.
Lucas Iannone from Scranton Prep, friend of the show.
Yep.
And Jason Casper. These were both former Times-Tribune Boys Swimmers of the Year. Lucas was as a sophomore. Jason Casper was last year as a junior. And I couldn't have gone wrong with either one, but that's not true when you look at it from different perspectives.
Right.
So I really came down to Lucas Iannone being a silver medal winner. I think that's a level, regardless of what classification you're competing at, where you kind of get the edge.
Right.
Okay. When you get that silver medal. If you got a bronze also, that would probably be it. Once you start getting to the 4th and 5th place medals in states, then you kind of have to go and see how you would have done in the other classification. But, he also got a 4th place medal in his other events. So, and he set some records. He broke records that were set or held by Lakeland's Pete K. Wise, who was a 2-time state champion. So he was the performer of the year. It's not about who's the better swimmer between the two. It's who was the performer of the year. And Jason Casper had a great year as well. I mean, it's not. It really could have been 1A and 1B.
Right.
Okay, but I want to thank the swimmers. They were great this year, and the coaches were spectacular in helping me put that together last week.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's we do put a lot of effort into picking those all region teams. We think a lot about them, and that's a very, very close thing for you. I've had that in the past, definitely last year with wrestling, and it's shouldn't take away from what anyone did. It's just it's a great honor. It's a cool thing, and but yeah, great swimmers. That doesn't take anything away.
That's correct.
But all right, Joby, we reached that hour mark, so we should probably start.
You got the roundups tonight.
I was going to say, thanks for taking the time. Follow us, the Times-Tribune.com/sports for all the live events that are happening today. We'll get those in and go varsity to 570.com. Get those box scores for baseball and softball. Follow Joby's Facebook page, Joby Fawcett, the Times-Tribune. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, the Times-Tribune Sports. Follow us on X at SportsTT. And subscribe to this podcast wherever you get them, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and, of course, Podbean, where we record this every week. Thank you to Olivia Thomas for joining us on top of